So I got a good introduction there, so I don't need to redo this. But just to say, I'm one of the biodiversity officers in Fingal, and as Ronan outlined there, I work with the Biodiversity Officer Network as well. So just to say, there's a range of different departments in local authorities that work with community groups. So there's biodiversity officers, the heritage officers, climate action officers, and also environmental awareness officers. And there's also several departments. So there's parks and operations departments, there's local area offices, community officers, and they do a huge amount of work with communities and also crucially our libraries. So sometimes we will work with those other departments and groups, and sometimes it's just on specific projects. So we have a biodiversity officer network. So across the network, this is through the Heritage Council. So there's funding for local authorities to have biodiversity officers through the Heritage Council. So there's 39 officers now in place across 29 of the 31 local authorities, and there's others in recruitment. And this has been really transformative. I went from being one of only a couple of biodiversity officers. So we meet a few times a year. We have training events, but we also have online meetings, and we can work on joint projects together, which we all have limited budgets. So that really helps, and we can actually make a very positive benefit for biodiversity through those, and also offer support, guidance, and advice. Each local authority should have a biodiversity action plan or is in the throes of producing a biodiversity action plan. And that'll be based. So Dublin City has its own plan. There's Fingal Council in Dublin has its own plan, and Dún Laoghaire. And then across the country, then the different counties will have a biodiversity action plan. And this really helps steer biodiversity conservation, but also actions for the officers. And also that's where specific projects, but also awareness raising with community groups and events can all be organised through those plans. So we can offer a range of support to community groups. So I've given you a snapshot here, and then I'll go into a little bit more detail a little bit further on. So we can offer advice. So this can be on improving and maintaining your local area for biodiversity. So that could include, planting hedgerows, areas to do meadows, what type of meadows to do, creating ecological corridors. If you've got any protected sites or particular species at risk in your area, we can offer advice on that. We can also provide training. So that's either from ourselves or from in conjunction with another authority, say like the National Biodiversity Data Centre. We can host workshops in species identification. This is a big long list that you can do, but just a couple of snapshots. There's bumblebee identification, butterflies, local birds. But if your group is looking for, say, specific species identification, we can accommodate that as well. We also support local action. So that's pond creation. That could be cleaning of existing ponds or waterways, invasive species removal, and again, tree planting. And that's just, a snapshot. And then crucially, we maximize resources on projects that we work on in partnership. So that's partnership with NGOs, third level institutes, other agencies, and also with community groups. And that really maximizes the benefit we can provide for biodiversity. There's also citizen science, so we can promote research and awareness of biodiversity. And I'll talk a little bit about some citizen science projects a little bit further down. We can also, some local authorities can provide grants or offers guidance for specific community local biodiversity action plans. And the Community Foundation for Ireland also provides grants for those and has done over the number of years. We also then can either run events ourselves, many of which you might be attending local authority Biodiversity Week events, or we can provide grants for communities to do their own local projects or events for either Biodiversity Week and or Heritage Week. We also provide a lot of guidance and training. So this is just a snapshot of some of the different ranges across the whole of the country. So there's invasive alien species, pocket guides there to learn about invasive alien species, tree management guidelines, birds of prey, barn owls. I'm putting up barn owl boxes. And also we do training for local authority staff. So that could be the poster there for lighting that was started in the west of Ireland, but has now been rolled out across the whole country. And that's workshops specifically for local authority staff, including lighting engineers, roads, etc., to find out, okay, what are the impacts of lighting on wildlife, and what mitigation measures can be put in place to help reduce those impacts. A couple of key projects. These are just literally a snapshot. So swifts are a climate change indicator species. Swifts are at risk both from climate change, there's increased storms, but also sadly from retrofit. Retrofit, we want to reduce leaks from the house, and so we actually wrap the house. But what you can end up doing is actually blocking existing nesting sites. And swifts have been shown to be site faithful, so they'll come back and then they can't get back into their nesting site. And unfortunately, all bird species are in decline, but these are particularly impacted. So what we do as biodiversity officers, we need to collect data first just to see where a species is living, how is there increases, is there decreases, and that helps guide the type of work that you then do for that particular species. So back in Dublin City, I coordinated the Swift survey of 2021 with Birdwatch Ireland. So Birdwatch Ireland surveyors went out and surveyed the city. We could see, right, where are the key areas for swifts? And then the second stage of the project then was working with schools and community groups to install swift boxes. And that's really to try and increase the amount of nesting sites available for swifts. Swift Conservation Ireland do this work as well with local authorities, and several local authorities have got swift projects. So that's just one example. Some of the projects we do also can result in free public resources. So this is part of a citizen science project I worked on in Dublin, but this would be on recording birds of prey and also river birds. So here there's actually a guide that was produced to show people how they could actually identify certain species. Other partnerships, there's a project called the Hare's Corner. So there's several local authorities you can see listed there, and they've partnered with the Barnbio Trust to offer practical support to farmers, schools, landowners, and crucially community groups. And that's to create habitats, ponds, mini woodlands, and also heritage mini orchards. So a Hare's Corner is I wouldn't say abandoned, but it's an area of a corner of a farmer's field that wouldn't have been used. It wouldn't have been productive, for farming. So it sort of got left, and these little areas now can become like crucial havens for biodiversity. So this project has been rolled out, as I say, in several local authorities, and we could see, okay, best practice, what's worked, what's not worked, and that can then be applied for future projects. Working with faith-based groups. So back in March 23, the Irish Bishops' Conference, they agreed that 30% of church grounds could be set aside for biodiversity. And they've actually actively worked then with several biodiversity officers across the country on a project. So that became formalized into Return to Nature Biodiversity Project. And that's both Clare Council, but also Dunleary, Dublin, and others that are working with local church grounds. There's also community groups that are spearheading this as well, building ponds, planting trees, installing swift and barn owl boxes, for example. And again, this is really helping biodiversity at that local scale. And, church grounds, cemeteries in particular, can provide areas of respite for wildlife, especially in very urban environments, because they tend not to be inhabited, especially in the nighttime. So bats, for example, can be there, but also you see the fox there on the cover. So that's just a little snapshot of some of the partnerships that we work with people and organizations. So the citizen science projects. So biodiversity officers run citizen science projects with various partners. I sort of mentioned earlier, so I would have worked with Birdwatch Island, both on a birds of prey and also river birds. And the format of citizen science is that you run a workshop, and that really helps inform people who are interested in getting involved and monitoring a particular species. They're then also shown like how do they collect that data, what sort of things do you need to look out for? And the bottom photograph there, that's actually Liam Lysett of the National Biodiversity Data Centre. And he's actually giving a workshop on identifying butterflies. And the way it works now with biodiversity officers, if we're collecting data, we have an agreement that we actually send that data into the National Biodiversity Data Centre, or for, say, the Riverbirds and Raptors project, we'd set up a portal with them. So if you were going out and recording a kingfisher, for example, you could then send that sighting in straight away as part of the project. And that's crucial. So in terms of citizen science, it's not just going out and counting species. The data that's collected from that project could be used if there's any concerns raised from a planning matter, for example. So kingfisher, their nesting sites are annexed to protected sites. So a lot of the time when you're actually collecting data, it's really useful to help preserve that species. The type of citizen science you can do can depend on the time of year, but also what you can do. Like if you wanted to do something in Heritage Week, you could do it post-summer survey, but you could then use it to inspire action for next year. You could even do a little mini summer survey, and then get people involved, and then do the kind of full surveying the following year. So that's just a real brief overview of the range of different things that biodiversity officers can offer support on. But crucially here for National Heritage Week, I've also just thrown a few ideas together. So this year's theme is Heritage at Risk. So that encourages us to explore built, natural and cultural aspects of heritage that are endangered. And it's for us to reimagine and revive these sites, artifacts and practices. There is plenty of scope for events to highlight biodiversity at risk. Sadly, the stats for biodiversity here are not great. The fourth National Biodiversity Action Plan highlighted that 85% of Ireland's EU protected habitats and almost a third of our protected species are in unfavourable conservation status. Over half of native Irish plant species and wild bee species, have undergone declines and substantial declines, and 30% of bees are now threatened with extinction. And Birdwatch Island also reports that 63% of Ireland's bird species are in serious trouble. So these are quite stark figures. However, there is still hope, and actually the benefit of say Heritage Week and highlighting these matters is you can start to change kind of people's perception of biodiversity at that local scale, and actually then wanting to work on projects which, when is upscaled across the country, can have a really, really positive impact. So just a few examples of that. There's plenty of options to choose from. So biodiversity walks out in local nature, so to inspire people to connect with what's on their doorstep. There's biodiversity talks and also webinars. You could host general biodiversity or specific species or a current topic. So we've just had David Attenborough's 100th birthday. And so there's a lot of promotion at the moment for the film that he produced called Ocean, and about our impacts on the marine environment. So again, you could have a talk or a webinar on a specific current topic. There's also workshops, and this would be more where it's learning practical hands-on. Now it could also be, you know, learning about identifying plants and species, but then also, you know, how to build a pond, for example, how to lay a hedgerow properly, how to put in a woodland. And that's very kind of practical conservation on the ground. And then the local community can then see the results of that over time as well. Again, you could do a citizen science survey. Um, you could link in crucially as well with your local ecology group or an environmental NGO. So Bat Conservation Ireland have local bat panels now that actually will link in with local community groups. Birdwatch Ireland have local branches, so does the Wildlife Trust and also the Irish Whale and Dolphin Group. And in Dublin, there's the Dublin Naturalist Field Club. And again, they would do walks and talks. Irish Wildlife Trust would do walks and talks. So there's other scope there for working during Heritage Week. You could also, after doing, say, or if you didn't want to do that kind of more kind of just identification or walk and talk, you could organise, say, a local litter cleanup. You could help improve local areas for wildlife, make and put up bird or bat boxes, how to build a wildlife pond, composting and promoting soil health and biodiversity. And that's becoming even more crucial as our knowledge of the soil environment grows, encouraging your neighbours not to use pesticides, for example. There's also removing invasive alien species. You could look at having a Leave No Trace workshop, or if you wanted to do, say, nature and art project. Art has the capacity to reach an awful lot of people and a wider audience. So you could highlight local species or habitats through this medium. And one thing would be, say, you could go and sketch kind of wildflowers in the local area. You could host a wildlife book club that would evoke discussion to protect biodiversity. There's lots of really interesting books. You could host a bird ringing demonstration. This is good to see where people can get close up and see the birds very close up, and they can find out about why monitoring species is important. It's looking at trends over time, what species are in decline, if any are in increase, and that causes an imbalance within an ecosystem. But it's also really fun to see the birds. I get a great kick out of those myself. But something else is possibly some family activity days out in nature. In Fingal, we've also hosted snorkeling events, kayaking events, and also hiking that would have a bit more of a nature theme to them. To highlight, we have Wild Child Day. That's on Saturday, the 22nd of August, and that encourages children to get outdoors, explore local nature, and also engage in heritage activities. And a lot of the suggestions here are something you could do for adult activities as well. Scavenger hunts and nature walks. Scavenger hunts in particular, really, really good for kids. They can go out and actually collect samples, bring them back. They can go out and look for various species. They could look at different, meadows, the plants and species that are there, hedgerows, woodlands. Coastal and marine sites are also important as well. You could go rock pooling or do an explore your shore. You could look for particular mammals or explore mammals within your local area. There's just a list of them there, and I include some marine species as well for people in coastal sites. What birds can be seen locally, for example, amphibians. Okay, so spring, we're not in springtime in Heritage Week, it's in autumn. However, pond dipping is still very popular. And actually, you can also contact LawPro to see if you could host a water quality workshop. And they would actually show you, they do kick sampling, and they would actually show you the river invertebrates and how those are used for water quality. You could also look at exploring local areas for native wildflowers, including what's sometimes classed as weeds, but these are native plants, and also highlight at the same time why picking flowers can impact pollinators and habitats. So I've seen where we've had pyramidal orchids one week and then they're gone the next. Just people have come along and picked them, thinking they're pretty, but instead of picking them, they could maybe learn to sketch them through art. Reptiles, did you know Ireland has a lizard? So in some areas of the country, there's the common lizard. So in general, people find that fascinating because we generally don't think of Ireland as having reptiles. Insects in the garden, but also discovering about pollination, bees and butterflies. And then just to say, so biodiversity officers may be able to support a Heritage Week event for you, either through doing an event in conjunction with your group, offering financial or other support, and then providing resources or signage for the event or project. Don't forget environmental awareness, climate action, and also the heritage officers, they can offer supports as well. The libraries, as I say, they're great spaces to run workshops, but also get projects and resources out into local communities. There's the local authority water program, which I mentioned earlier. And then Just Even I did a quick search for just various grants from local authorities to community groups. So there's the local amenity grant scheme, a community enhancement scheme, community activities funding scheme, festival grants, summer project funding, and also climate action funds. And there are more and more supports that come down the line all the time. So it's just keeping an eye out in local press and on your local website for your council. So then you can find a specialist through the Heritage in Schools programme. So the Heritage Council Heritage in Schools programme has a list of specialists. So if you're looking for someone to say do a piece on, say, butterflies or something, you can find them there, or even for built heritage as well. You could connect with local branches of ENGOs or environmental NGOs. So again, Bat Conservation Ireland, I've just left the links in here. Just to say, Ronan and I were talking about producing a PDF guide for groups. So it would just have a lot of these links, but also some further information that might be useful for you. And we're going to be working on that as well. That will be a PDF that you'll be able to download. A colleague of mine, Christina, actually gave me just this summary table. So this is other grants for community biodiversity projects that you can avail of. So there's Community Foundation of Ireland, there's National Parks and Wildlife Service. There's the Heritage Council there, Inland Fisheries, Waterways Ireland, Free Trees, and also Trees for Communities. And again, what we'll do in this PDF is actually put this together and make sure that this is available for you to have a look. And as I say, this will be added to as well, this summary table. So that's a very brief, it's 20 minutes. There's a lot of information in this, I realise. But as I say, we'll be producing a PDF. But thank you for listening, and that gives you a snapshot of all of the support that we can offer.
That was a whirlwind of information. Thank you very much, Lorraine. I really appreciate it. That's my natural heritage metaphor there. But really appreciate it. Thank you very much. We've had a few questions in, so I will get to them now. We've had a few from Martha. So hello, Martha. I recognize you from Mahari's. First question she asked, can Swift boxes be put up instead where a house has been retrofitted?
Yes, so the best thing to do is to have Swift bricks. So when a house is being retrofitted, you can install Swift bricks. So these are basically bricks that have little hole, they have cavity inside, and they have a hole in it. And you can then put those up and then put regular bricks around them, or can put the surround wrap around them. So that's the kind of number one thing that we recommend. And then after that then is actually putting in an actual, hanging an actual box on the outside. And there's different types of cavity boxes that you can get. And we're actually in Fingal just finalizing. A colleague of mine's there is she's been working on a guidance document which has all this information in it, not just for swifts, but for other species as well, other birds and also bat species. So that will hopefully be coming out soon as well. So got here, do they have to be flush with the wall? No, so a lot of the Swift boxes that have been built, they're actually sitting on the external wall. And ideally what you would do if you're hanging a Swift box is you would also have a calling system. So that would come on at certain key times, and it's just Swift calls. And other Swifts, particularly there's juvenile Swifts, they call them bangers, because they actually bang into structures. They're trying to find nesting sites. But what they do, if they hear other Swifts calling, they'll be like, because swifts are colony birds, so they'll hear other swifts and then they'll go looking for nesting sites. So there's so you can add the calling systems as well.
Yeah, and I was just a question for myself, or Lorraine, sorry, just out of curiosity. I've heard before that Swifts prefer north facing their boxes to be north facing. Is that true, or is that
So generally sort of north to east
yeah.
for the majority of bird boxes, and that's mainly because if you put a box on a south facing wall,
Mm,
the nest can overheat.
okay.
Because they're just constantly in sunlight. So you can get occasions where eggs can bake.
Mm,
So
wow.
generally birds won't nest on those locations.
Great. Okay. Thank you. As a comment from Tabitha from Nature Networks Ireland. So Tabitha, thanks to you for joining us, and she puts a comment in there about working on citizen science projects. So, and she leaves her email there, so I think everyone can reach out to her if they want to get in touch. Another question then from Martha about where is it? Minka. It's a European platform endorsed by UNESCO. I think the National Biodiversity Data Centre will have access to recording done via Minka. So have you any experience with it, Lorraine?
I'm having a look for where that let me just see where that comment is. So apologies, I'm just trying to scroll down.
Mm,
Um,
might be the start of the chat.
Let me just have a look here. No, I haven't used that. But that's interesting. I'll have a look at that. I guess what's traditionally happened in local authorities is if we contract surveys, that survey data normally stays within the local authority. And reports might get published online because it's public data. There'll be some data like sensitive sites, the location of say badger setts, otter holts, particular nests, say bat roosts. We generally keep private because unfortunately we do have issues with badger baiting and people impacting sites. But then what we do then is with the National Biodiversity Data Centre is then send them the data. So it could be that the data centre um, will look into this more and possibly offer us further advice. But I can have a look at that myself. But at the moment, we haven't used those. But it's good to know that there's another platform out there.
Great. Okay. And Martha shares the link there as well. I think we'll leave it at that, Lorraine. Thank you very much. As I'm conscious of time and everything.
There's
Once
just
again,
one there's
go,
just
go.
one comment there actually, Marta, again. It's just we've just had our secondary school win EcoUNESCO Senior Award with a project we worked on with them on ringed plover. So it says one of the Heritage Week events will focus on ringed plovers. So I was just going to say I've got a project. Well, it's Birdwatch. They're running a project in Port Rann on Little Tern, but also ringed plover. So again, they're one of those species, the many list that are at risk. So Marta, so congratulations. I'd like to say to the secondary school for that, but also I'd be interested to find out more. So if you contact Ronan or and he can send that on, that would be great.
Yeah, and I see another question here. Sorry, came in through the Q&A. Question answer is from Marianne, and she asks, "How does one access the bat panel for Munster?"
So let me just have a look. There's actually, I don't have it open in front of me, but the link let me just open it here. There was actually a link to, let me just put this in. I'm just going to put this link here for you, Marianne, just in the chat. So that's it there. So on the Bat Conservation Island website, under the Get Involved, it says the Bat Panel. So if there isn't one listed for Munster, I would send an email to Bat Conservation Island and check that, or you could check with your local biodiversity officer just to find out they might be involved in the Bat Panel themselves.
Great, great. Thank you very much. As I said, that's been brilliant, Lorraine. I think you've inspired a lot of people here in terms of natural heritage and biodiversity angles they can take for heritage risk for heritage. So thank you very much. We really appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
Great.